What is spatchcock funk? Let's lay the groundwork here.
We view it as a community built around partying. We use food and cocktails and partying as a way to bring people together. Our show's about drinking, so I can be drunk and not worry about getting hassled.
You should be able to have fun and not literally kill yourself for the venture you're trying to start.
Everyone is afraid to fail, and they fear failure more than they love success. I was able to tell myself, dude, this is my job. Like, is this real?
You've just got right now to be happy. Matt, welcome to the podcast. Really great to have you here.
I'm excited, John. I love what you're doing and helping people get the whole person and the whole experience. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, before we start, what is spatchcock funk? Let's lay the groundwork here.
All right. So Spatchcock Funk, we view it as a community built around partying. So it started out as a cooking show, but our media properties, so we're on PBS across the country, have a YouTube channel, all the social channels. We do live events, but basically we use food and cocktails and partying as a way to bring people together. So we've built this really strong community across the country, and it's weird. And you know this from all your experience and running businesses, but our business is built on my and my partner Alex's personal brand. So since we're talking business, I'll go to the grocery store and people will come up and want to take a picture. And it's fun at bars because our show's about drinking, so I can be drunk and not worry about getting hassled. But people come up and talk about it. We had a couple tell us watching the show for their date night kind of saved their marriage. We've been invited to weddings in Colorado and parties in Oklahoma. So it's really about creating this natural, organic community so they feel like they're part of our extended social circle. And it's been a lot of fun. Scary, but fun.
Yeah, I know. I had a little chance to check out your website earlier and was scrolling through some of the episodes, and yeah, it just looks like you guys have a lot of fun while you're doing what you do. And I think that's, one of the things I hope that young entrepreneurs get from watching this podcast or listening to it is that there's room for that. You should do that, right? You should be able to have fun and not literally kill yourself for the venture you're trying to start.
Man, you say that so well, and you say it easily because you've experienced it. And I think not just when you're younger, I mean, I'm 47 and maybe I'm 48. I think I'm 48. We started this business, but having worked at ad agencies and taught, when you come up, they're like, I just have to get a win and get a big win and be successful. And they see that. So you grind yourself out all the way, all the time, and burn yourself out. And sometimes people are starting businesses in a field that they don't even love, right? So for me, I have friends of mine, I'm sure you do too, that are accountants and they hate their job. And there's nothing wrong with accounting. The world needs accountants. But find something you love to do. You can work harder at it and longer at it if you care about it. That's the first thing. And also care about yourself in the process, because if you break yourself down just to be successful in business, it's not even about enjoying the benefits of money and those things. It's about like enjoying your life. And I think that gets lost. We learn about the so-called hustle culture, #hustle. Everybody's like grind, grind, grind. But that really isn't accurate. You spend more time at work than you do anything else in your life, more than your kids, more than having sex, more than partying, more anything that you like to do. So take care of it, enjoy it too, but be careful about yourself. It's really important.
Yeah, and what you said about getting the big win, right? We see that a lot where they just need the big win and they get the big win, but then that's not enough, and they realize that, right? So then there's the next big win and the next thing, and they're always reaching for the next thing. And what I love about Spatchcock Funk and the things that you guys are talking about and doing and showing by example is that you can enjoy the moment while you're still looking for the next big win, right? It's the next big win isn't going to guarantee you happiness. You've just got right now to be happy.
Yeah, I that next big win is a weird thing. I think for every human, and even in life in general, right? Like I was looking forward to this podcast today, but earlier, and I was excited about this conversation, but I had a meeting with this tequila brand that we're hoping to do some business with. And that was a fun meeting too, but I had to remind myself not to think about the podcast and just stay in the moment in the meeting. So we all think about the time hustling and grinding to get there. And then you get to this thing and you don't take any time to enjoy it. Alex and I, when we got picked up on PBS and in LA and these other cities, one day we're sorry, my cat's going to join me.
That's all good.
Budding entrepreneur. You'll sit there and you won't spend time and be like, wow, this is a really big deal for us. And they move on to the next big thing. But it's like doing drugs. And when you're doing things like that, you get this high and you're thinking to replicate it. if you keep chasing it that way, it's only going to destroy you. So why'd you get to that win in the first place? What you've done, I think, is really impactful. You've had a bunch of big wins, and now you're spending a lot of that energy and passion teaching and doing things like this podcast. So you can employ that like hardwired passion into something that's meaningful, but also allows you to stay in the moment instead of, I mean, I'm sure you're probably going to write more books and do other things like that, but it's still important to stay in the moment. And that's the hardest thing for all of us to do.
It's one of the hardest things for me to learn too. When I was younger, that it was the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And on one hand, that's good because it keeps you going and striving and achieving. But if you're not enjoying the journey, then that's problematic, right? Because you never really get to sit in it and enjoy it and just kind of celebrate what you have done. And I like when I see young entrepreneurs do that. Um, and hopefully they'll start doing that more. Yeah.
Yeah. The be seeing someone enjoy what they do is my favorite thing ever. Like, I was at an event last night and the bartender, they're making craft cocktails. And like she was using a tweezer to put coffee beans on top of this. And I saw her like take one coffee bean out and to put the other one back in. And she didn't know I was watching her because she probably would have thought that was creepy. But she was smiling like, okay, this is the right one. And that small moment makes me happy. And like, the thing about our job that I love, like we shot one of our half-hour shows with a partnership with the Buffalo Bills, and got to use their logos. And it was before a game. It was a beautiful day out, and we're just filming, partying, and it's kind of parts of it are scripted. But at one point, I had a chance to sit back, and I cracked open a beer, and I'm getting ready for the next thing we're going to shoot. And I'm just looking at like our crew, and they're hanging out, eating hot dogs, like having a blast. And I was able to tell myself, dude, this is my job. Like, is this real? So I think when you can have something once in a while, get that, but as much as you can, that to me is important.
So important. I agree. So talk to us a little bit about your journey, right? You didn't, you weren't born doing spatchcock funk. How did you get to this spot? Like, yeah, tell us a little bit about your history.
Yeah, it's fun. Like we tell people, like on our website, it's like, oh, we were drunk on a boat when we came up with this idea, which is kind of true. We So my background is I got out of school. I lived in New York City and worked at Ogilvy, the big ad agency, for a while. And then I moved back here and kept working at ad agencies, and I loved it. I ended up working at Mower, where my wife is now the president and CEO, and Terakeet, and I was the chief operating officer at Digital Hive. But while I was there, while I was at Mower, actually, Eric, who's a lifetime trustee at Syracuse, said, "Hey, we have to have someone go up and teach a class at Syracuse." And I'm like, "I don't want to do that. College kids are stupid and annoying." He's like, "Cool, you're doing it." So I went and I fell in love with it. Like it just brings me such joy to see people like get excited about something. And unlike a job in the ad agency, like no one's going to listen to me, but like you're talking to students, they're like, "Oh my gosh," and they're writing things down. So while I was doing that, my partner Alex, who worked at ad agencies, and he also was the creative director at Syracuse, where he won an Emmy for the Rhapsody in Orange program. We've been buddies for a long time, throwing great parties. And people are like, "Well, with his videography background, and you guys love throwing parties, you guys should make a cooking show." So we would like kind of like laugh it off. But when you have an idea as an entrepreneur, and someone says that's a cool idea, you kind of feel satisfied for a little bit and you push the idea off. So when I was teaching at Lemoyne, which I did until this summer when I resigned it to do this full time, the students were, a lot of them wanted to be influencers, right? And having worked in ad agencies and digital agencies, I know the business really well, but I hadn't actually created something. So it was a perfect time for Alex and I'm like, let's just try. So we made a YouTube show. And we're like, okay, if we get like 100 views, we'll make another one. And that got like 400 views. And then made another one and that got 800 views. So now we started doing it more often. And the local news channel here, the NBC affiliate from Sinclair Broadcasting was like, hey, we like this. Can we put this on like our weekly news show? And we're like, sure. So at that point, we started to build a business plan. Like, wouldn't it be cool to get a show, like a half-hour show on TV? So we had an idea to make a pilot. And PBS reached out, WCNY, this guy, Mitch Gelman, who's great, said, hey, do you guys want to make a half-hour show? And we're like, yeah, we have a pilot we're doing. And he's like, come on board and do it. And we were nervous because our show is built on authenticity. Like it's raw. So we were like, we make dirty jokes. We do different things that most people, I think, don't do. And we weren't sure if PBS would be cool with that. So part of it, every show, we talk about some form of social justice we care about. Mental health is a big one. But the pilot, we were talking about breaking the gender pay gap and the glass ceiling. And we called it the boss bitch brunch. And it was celebrating my wife becoming a CEO, an excuse to make a boozy brunch. So the more we talk about things like body positivity and sex positivity, it allows us to make forking and spooning jokes, right? So to our pleasant surprise, our goal was to have that people kind of embrace that. So instead of leaning back, they would lean in. And at times our show is viewed more by women than men, despite all the dirty jokes and it being pretty masculine. So we're achieving that. And that's what we're trying to continue to build upon. So stay true to the mission while still having a good time and creating new and fun different things.
I love that. And I think there's a lot of people who don't want to take everything so seriously, right? And they just want to have fun. They want to let their guard down and they don't want to be offended by everything they're supposed to be offended by. So yeah, that's great to hear that that resonates.
Yeah, you mentioned like people want some more lighthearted things in the world. Like we're living in interesting times, and there's divisive stuff going on. But what we're finding is the data shows everything's data driven. People are yearning for just human connection, right? Like they
Mhm.
want to just be around people that want to be around other people, and that is really the what we're trying to do. So I think it's funny because it's a kind of a simple premise, but we every human spends like hours a day on their phone, and you're in a classroom, but when you're not in your classroom, you're isolated from other people. So it's a good way to get as close to being around other people as we can. So it's basically like replicating real life is what we're trying to do. But it's tough, but fun.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's a lot tougher than it looks when when the finished product is released. So how did that process work? Like, so PBS reached out to you, or was there like a process you had to go through, like auditions or sending a demo tape, or how does something like that even happen?
It's funny when we have investors in our business, and when we were talking to them, we're talking about our valuation and everything, and academically I know how all this works, and they're like, okay, so what's the path? And we're like, there is no path. There's no like business model that you can follow for creating a media brand. Whether like Guy Fieri, who's one of the best in the world, he won a cooking contest show, and then Binging with Babish just makes YouTube videos, and that blew up. So for us, there's no like you can I'm sure you can send in tapes, but that's not how that worked for us. They reach out to us and said, hey, are you interested in doing this? And we said yeah. And what they want to do, so it was through WCNY and Mitch Gelman, who's the CEO there. PBS, especially now with their federal funding being cut, is really desperate to find good programming, but each station operates as its own business entity. So what they hope to do is to get a show like ours, have it picked up by other PBS networks, and then eventually get sold to, like HBO owns Sesame Street as an example. So
Mhm.
they're like, we want to see if other stations will pick this up. They did, and then we talked to other networks. So that's the way that we did it. Most people might go through the process of hiring an agent, and we've talked to agents. So for us, they came to us, we put something together, put it out there, and it's continued to grow that way. So the problem with content in the world, and it's not a bad problem, like people give young folks a hard time about their attention span. It's not that they can't pay attention, it's that they have so many options to get content from. Like this podcast, I've listened to your podcast on YouTube and on Apple Music. So, I mean, it's the same content, multiple outlets. So, there's so much media in the world that when they're trying to create TV programming, it's hard to find the right things, and everything's fractured. It's like the birth of cable TV. Like, is streaming taking over? Is cable dying? Is it not?
Mhm.
So, how they find content, it used to be like most recently, who has the most followings on social media? Then they give them a TV show. But we got a TV show before we got a bigger following on social media. So there's really no roadmap. So for us, my experience, Alex and mine, has been they reach out to us, but now like we've met with big networks and talk and have conversations with those people. Sometimes they reach out to us, other times we reach out to them or through an intermediary. So uh, if someone's watching this and wants to do that, what they should do first is make good content. Don't worry about who's going to watch it. No one's going to watch it at first.
Right.
And your first one is going to absolutely suck. Like you're going to watch. I mean, I see myself, we're in 1.9 million homes over the course of a year on whatever platform we're doing. I see myself and hear my own voice every day. And every day I hate the sound of my voice. And I look at myself and I'm like, oh, is that what I look like? Even days when I feel like, I have a good hair day. So it's like, first, just make something cool and then worry about how you get it in front of people. It does not work the other way. That's where you see like the Hawk Tuah girl, who actually I think is quite funny and charming. They rushed get her somewhere, and all of a sudden she's playing in like crypto spaces and areas that is not her core competency, and then she fizzles off. So she had a shot and then didn't do anything with it because she wasn't prepared. So
Mhm.
first, prepare your ideas and your cool content, and then worry about getting the people to see it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And yeah, it's humbling at first when you're putting stuff out there, right? Because you're putting everything into it, and like you're literally getting dozens of people to look at it at first, right? But it takes time, and I think consistency. And for me, it's just been, these are conversations I'd want to have anyway. And if
Yeah.
people are going to watch it, that's great, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
That point about like putting yourself out there, like, and the people that are watching this, and you got a lot of listeners, they're entrepreneurs, so they're already brave in spirit, which is great because it's not for the faint of heart. But when you're creating media, like you wrote a book, and it's a good book, and you write it, and you pour so much heart and soul and time into this, and then it gets published, and you're like, that's it? Like, what
Right.
happens now?
Now what? Yeah.
We make a show that takes 120 hours, man hours across the board to produce a half hour of content. And then all of a sudden it airs and you're like, oh, okay, that was it. Like, so it's like being able to know that you're creating something. But when I think about like young people, when I talk to students about what entrepreneurship is, the cool, awesome thing that you like when we're doing a live event or our show airs somewhere, that is represents maybe 10% of the time. Like if you were a football player, all we see is the awesome games on Sunday. We don't see the hours of classroom work and backbreaking time in the gym. So most of your time is spent preparing for the game, not in the game itself. So once you can kind of get your head around that, like Taylor Swift she's a legendary entrepreneur. She's a great storyteller, great songwriter. I don't have a ton of her music on my playlist, but there's some, and I respect her game. And all we see is her like in these executive suites of NFL stadiums and on stage, right? But the bulk of her time is spent in an airplane, writing music, in a recording studio, hating what she's hearing. But all you get to see is the good stuff. Like young entrepreneurs and old entrepreneurs, I guess, like me, and you might do this too. We glorify and romanticize the bad parts of the job, right? Like everybody likes to tell the story about Derek Jeter in Double A crying and calling his dad that he wants to quit, right? But no one wants to live that, right? Like
Right.
took a huge pay cut to do this. No, everyone wants to say it, but then you're doing it. You're like, oh man, I got to
Mhm.
decide which streaming service to cut. And that real part, once you can like realize, okay, and believe this is what this takes to get here, then it becomes easier from your mental health standpoint. Because without that, without having a good, healthy approach mentally, it poisons the rest of your life, and that's the death knell of a business.
Yeah, and taking that leap is hard, right? And like you said, we glorify all the hard times, right? Or we glorify when we see it in other people, but yeah, it's a hard thing to do yourself. However, once you've done it once or twice, you just kind of get used to it. And I guess my mental trick is just to keep going to the worst case scenario, right? So when I started my company for the first time, I was like, well, it's the worst case scenario. Like we'll have to move in with my wife's parents or with my parents for a little while, and that would suck, but we'll live. And all right, if that's the worst case scenario and I can live with it, then let's just go for it.
I know exactly what you mean, and my thought is like everyone is afraid to fail,
Mhm.
and they fear failure more than they love success. So what you just said, and you said it much more eloquently than I think it. So you really just put that in a great context. Like what the worst case is going to be. For me, it's like being able to recognize failure. Like failure, she and I, like we go way back, right? We all fail more than we succeed. A great baseball player bats 300. That means they failed 70% of the time.
Yeah.
So understanding that failure is part of it is an important aspect because um, I don't know. I've wondered this about you. When I was getting my MBA and you were speaking at one of the, I never had your classes, but you were at one of the cohorts we had. You come across very confidently but approachable, which is awesome. Anyways, you might not be one of the people, but most of us suffer from imposter syndrome, right? Like your skill level is going like this, your confidence level is going like that, and there's this gap. So being able to recognize when that happens, like there will be days, like we did work with Tito's Vodka and made content with them, and they're a $4 billion brand that we had just started. We had no business working with, and then we're doing this live event, and I come off of the stage, or someone comes up to me at a bar and says, "Oh my God, my husband and I love your show." I had this sense of like, wow, it's working. This feels really good. But more than that, I'll like make something like, oh my God, is anybody gonna watch this? Or like, we'll hear a no from a brand that might be a potential sponsor or a network saying, hey, you're not ready yet for that. And then you're like, what are we doing? So that being aware of that feeling is something that I think entrepreneurs, I think that sinks a lot of people. And if you can learn to like know that sucky part's gonna happen and be able to mentally like, again, good mental health and be able to balance that, then you give yourself a real shot. But usually I believe that most entrepreneurs, or just most people in general, where they get beat is they beat themselves. They just fail and they give up when they shouldn't have.
100%. Yeah. And I think anybody who's doing cool stuff is going to have imposter syndrome, right? I think it's just part of the human condition. And I get it all the time too. Like no matter what I've done already, sometimes I feel like, am I really the guy to be doing this next thing, whatever it is? And like you were talking about sitting there with the people from Tito's, it doesn't matter what, you could be in a room with somebody else who's doing cool stuff and you're trying to pitch them or want to do something with them. And you still think, do I belong here?
Totally.
Have I done enough to be here? And I think it's those mistaken beliefs we have, like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I don't have enough money. Whatever it is you're not enough of, it just gets in your head, and you gotta take out that head trash.
Yeah, that head trash is a great way to think about it. I think about the, we'll talk about cool stuff in a second because you just sparked something in me. But the first thing is though is for me, and my wife and I talk about this all the time. My wife is a baller. She's a CEO. She's super dynamic and just such an awesome human being. But we talk a lot about how we talk to ourselves, like our inner monologue.
Mm.
Like I talk to myself sometimes, and I would never talk to a friend like that ever. Like I forgot my flash drive. You piece of shit. Like how are you not prepared for this? And it's trying to stop yourself from doing that. That's one thing, and I think that matters for all of us as humans to do that, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. But the other thing about making cool stuff, like, and in your business history is interesting because you've created businesses that have market and demand and supply and things that you can manage. And then you've also created content, like writing a book and this podcast. Creating content and creative stuff is a very weird animal because your audiences, you got to create something that you like and you hope that they like, but people's taste, like people don't like broccoli. Some people love broccoli. I mentioned Taylor Swift. Some people love her. Some people don't like her. And you have to also acknowledge that some people just aren't going to like the stuff you're creating. I'm not a huge country music fan. Most of my crew loves it. I'll go to country music concerts, but you're not going to find me listening to it. And it's not that I don't respect their ability to write songs. Great songwriters, great lyricists, great musicians. It's just not my cup of tea, right? So creating something, when you put it out there, you have to know that not everyone is going to love it. And when people say that's not true, it's 100% true. I mean, no one is loved by everybody. You think about people in history that were loved, like Jesus Christ this dude was around, and there's a religion, like millions upon hundreds of billions of people have followed this religion. That guy got literally crucified, right? Like not everybody loved him. So it's reminding yourself like, hey, like this isn't gonna be for everybody, and that's okay, but you've got to be okay with it first. And I think that's something that people, I don't know if you've experienced that, like with your book, like, I'm certain of this, that someone has read your book and been like, I don't get it. Or
Yeah.
like, I totally disagree with what he's saying. But other people, more than not, since it sold a lot of copies, were like, oh, cool. And they're recommending it. So it's being aware of the fact that you are not going to please everybody. And it's hard. Like I tend to be a bit of a people pleaser because I want to see people be happy and I want to, engage with them. So it's really tough when you create content. We've gotten comments like, this guy's tattoos are fake, which they're not. Someone once sent us an email that was like, I've watched every episode of this show twice and I hate it. It's if I wanted cliche jokes and bad recipes, I'll keep watching it. We're like, well, thanks for the views. I mean, you watched every episode twice. That's cool. So you've got to know that that's going to happen, and it's hard, but it's true.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've got to just either have a really thick skin or just agree not to look at comments and and that kind of thing because yeah, people are all over the place and of course when they're anonymous they can be really mean and that kind of thing, right? Yeah,
Totally.
I try to avoid that and just think, hey, I'm doing stuff that I would like. I think there's enough people out there who kind of like the same things I like. But this particular podcast, has such a broad spectrum between mental, physical, and spiritual health. So I'm talking to like biotech people and biohackers, all the way over to like the consciousness and woo woo manifestation people, and then everything in between. So it's natural that I'm going to get some people who resonate with some content and just hate the other stuff because they don't believe it or like it, and vice versa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. And if you go back and look at like on the YouTube page, you see all the different, just looking at the mosaic of tiles of the people there, it's a wide range of things. But again, that's what you're trying to capture. So you're going to have some leakage there, right? You're always
Yeah.
going to have like I don't know why I'm on this kick, but like Taylor Swift just dropped this new album, and I talked to a friend of mine, and she's her and her daughter are diehard Swifties. And I'm like, what do you think of the new album? And she's like, I really don't like it. But I still love her. So like there are people that are still gonna like consume the content. They might not like certain versions of it or certain episodes. But you mentioned not reading the comments. And I think it's a weird world for entrepreneurs now. Um, it's the only world that I've lived in. So I was kind of born in it from this standpoint, is data. The use of data is incredibly valuable. And the use of AI, super valuable too. So I say ignore the comments, but I don't know. I think you should, for me, we read them and we respond to all of them because we want to create this two-way dialogue. But the data is where you find out really where you are. So we had a brand partner. We still have this brand partner. And when we first met with them, they're like, we're interested in this because it's cool, but we think it's, too masculine for our brand, and our brand is very feminine. And we're like, totally get that. But here's our data, right? And the data shows that this stream actually is 65% women. And they're like, oh, is that data real? We're like, unless YouTube and Google are lying, yeah, this is real data. So the data can everywhere. I mean, I always would, my students would always make fun of me because of how bad I am at math. And I wasn't a math or an economics professor, but the numbers and data won't lie. And people don't want to see that. Like I work out I work out 6 days a week and I work out hard. And that's because I drink and eat a lot. So I just basically stay the same shape. But when you're trying to lose weight, we're afraid to look at the scale because we don't want to see the results. But if you really want to be successful, you've got to look at the numbers, and that will help kind of make decisions. And it's to me, it's one of the most interesting and sometimes scariest part of running a business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you need your customer feedback, right? Yeah. So so with you and your crew, right? Like I'd love to hear a little bit about your creative process. Like how do you pull together an idea for an episode or a show? How do you execute it? What are some of the things that happen behind the scenes before anybody tunes in?
Yeah, I love talking about this. We have this awesome crew that we work with. So and they all contribute to the creative process. So we have like, and we are hiring a social media manager right now, but all of our people that we employ actually have cooler and better jobs than what we're doing. They just like hang out and they like our show. So our sound and drone operator actually does work for the WWE for all like WrestleMania and those things. One of our creative directors and shooters, but he's really our director, Jeremy, like this guy just made a TV commercial for Google and has this awesome motion graphics business. So we just like hanging out together. We like the content. So we're very blessed in that regard. But the creative process, we want to come up with ideas that are fun and that we can be edgy and incorporate like the social justice themes. So really we get our crew together, which is my wife and Alex's wife and Jeremy and our buddy Nick, who like, he's a big creative part of this process, like our overall producer of things. And we come up with ideas. So we want to do like a horse racing theme party. So Nick's like, I'm like, I can't come up with a good name. And he's like, talk derby to me. And we're like, yes, that's the name. And in those meetings and ideas, a lot of things that I tend to be very aggressive and push the envelope. So a lot of stuff will get pulled back, but we have these meetings where things that probably would not fly on television get the creative process going. So for me, one of the best part, I think probably is the parties and everything, but maybe the best part too is that time with each other, just throwing ideas around. Like my wife, and I'll admit this only because she's not here right now. A lot of jokes actually are jokes that she came up with. And people are like, oh my gosh, you're so funny. And that joke was great. And she'll be like, I wrote that joke. And I'm like, she did write that joke. So it's a fun process. It's collaborative, and it takes a couple of like weeks just to come up with the ideas for the episodes, and then we script out some ideas and some jokes. Then we meet again and see where we go, and then each episode when they come up when we're planning it, then we dive into the real details of it. Um, so because we're considered reality TV, non-scripted, but it does involve scripting and planning and those type of things. So that's how we do it. But we're also developing this production house where we're going to produce other shows, and we're talking to people about that. People that either want to pick up some content, or people that we might want to work with and make them. So that process might be different. But we also own all of our intellectual property. So PBS, WCNY, they don't own any of it. But when we keep growing, they get percentages of our net profit. So everybody's happy in that regard. But because we own it, we are really fortunate enough to make all of the creative decisions. So the process I just described is ours. However, when we've worked with other people or sponsors, and you talk to other networks, they might say, hey, this is cool, but no more of this joke or whatever. So then you got to decide in your creative process, what do you do and what don't you do?
Yeah, so that is really good that you own that, and you drive that process. That's really good. Yeah. So what are some highlights or some of your favorite moments from the show?
Man, there's so many that just make me super happy. Um, a couple of ones that I think are cool is we have some friends that we bring different friend groups for these parties. Some of them we have 100 people at, some it's like more intimate. There's at least 3 couples that are dating that met at one of our events that didn't know each other, friend groups that have formed from that. So at the meta level, it's this cool proliferation of like good people hanging out with good people. But like some really special moments, like the Bills game was awesome because of the experience that people had. But actually, my favorite part of that was the day before we were in Buffalo setting up. So our crew that I just mentioned, we went out to dinner the night before. We ended up doing karaoke, and it's like midnight. We're having drinks, and I've got to be fresh and be on camera. And at one point, I'm like, we got to go to bed. But it was just so fun. We shot at Beacon Skiff, and we used their huge Airbnb, and we threw an absolute huge party. But the night before, our crew, we took their ATVs, and we would hide all around the apple orchard and use a drone and play hide and seek while we're drinking beer. So like, to me, those moments of being together while we're making the content, that's probably without a doubt my highlight. Like that part of the experience. And I hope everybody, like, when you're doing stuff that you work on, there are hard parts. Like I hate reviewing edits and doing the sales process. Like when you're writing your book, you didn't like editing it, I'm sure. And like when you're running your businesses, you didn't like auditing the book. So there's many parts you don't like, but if there's parts that you love, then you're in the right path.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And yeah, having fun while you're doing the thing is important, right? Like we kind of started talking about at the top. So what are you excited about? Like I mean, because we talked about, the next thing and the next thing, right? So we know you love what you're doing and who you're doing it with. Yeah, despite the times that are hard. So what's
Yep.
next and what's cool and what's really getting you excited?
So what I'm excited about is also what I'm scared about. And I think every day as an entrepreneur, I'm both exhilarated and terrified. Something cool will happen. We had this great creative meeting the other day with a brand we might do some work with. And then later on in the day, we're talking to our investors and they're like, hey, you like, we need to check on the life insurance. Like if one of you dies, we get recouped our full funds. And I'm like, ugh, I don't want to think about that. But going forward, it's kind of like the world is our oyster in that we have a lot of opportunities. So we're talking to different networks and things. But what I'm excited about is continuing to grow the brand. And I know that's a generic answer. So to be more specific, we're building a studio right now in Syracuse. We got a grant from the county, Onondaga County, and then we're putting money in, and so is the people that own the building, and then Gerhardt's Restaurant Supply Building, and we have Tommy Lincoln, who's a locally famous artist doing a big graffiti wall. Actually, he's doing that right now. So opening that's going to be cool, and we're having people hire us to go do live events like in Albany and in Ottawa. We talked to someone in Ottawa about doing an event up there. So it's really the growth of the business and seeing other people genuinely connect with it is what I'm most excited about. That's really kind of where everything is in the good part of it. I'm not excited about the bad parts that go with that, and the risk, right? So, but it outweighs it. And I think if you don't have that risk, those other things wouldn't be as exciting.
Right. Yeah. Just knowing that there's a downside to avoid, right? For sure. Well, that's cool.
Absolutely.
You're building a studio. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're excited about it. And I think like we do every year we do like a big party, and usually it's for like a nonprofit or for something else we believe in. And we like one of them we had 200 people show up, and we were giving out real like tattoos, like flash tattoos. And 40 people out of the 200 that were there got tattoos, which is wild. And a lot of them for the first time. And seeing people come back and be like, "Hey, when's the next party?" And like, my husband couldn't believe I got a tattoo. So that that going forward is doing more of that, where people live in the brand. And the studio will give us like an actual headquarters. Like I'm in my house right now, which is cool. My house is beautiful because my wife is super, has great taste. Maybe not in husbands, but in furniture and stuff. But it'll be cool to have our own space. And it's weird because you mentioned the bigger thing coming up. What's the next big thing? At first, like we had a logo, and then you saw people wearing our shirts out, which that's cool. And then like you're on TV, and that's cool. And like now, like a studio, and that'll be super exciting. And then we'll be looking for the next big thing. So this conversation is reminding me to like stay in that moment. Like go. Like I'm gonna go down there a little bit later today and just be like, I can't believe this is a thing right now. So it's exciting. And I really appreciated you asking about this. It makes me feel good because I've been in it like you every day in it. So it's good to be like, oh, this is actually cool.
Yeah. Take that beat to appreciate and realize where you are. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about a time that you can reflect on where you're like, it didn't go the way I wanted, or it's just a regret, or not a regret, because I don't personally, I try not to have any. You just look at the hard times and say, hey, I learned something from that, right? So I can't erase it. But yeah, what maybe a mistake or a thing that you wish went a different way, and how did you deal with that?
Man, a lot of mistakes, and I try to avoid regrets. Most of the regrets are like things that we didn't do, but when I look back, the learning point. So when we first worked with a big brand, um, we finally got their attention, and they're like, yeah, we're interested, let's work together. So we're like, cool, here's our idea. And they're like, that's awesome. So we're like, oh my god, this is so exciting. And they're like, how much do you guys want for this project? So Alex and I were like, what do you think? What do you think? And we're like, how's like $7,000? And they're like, oh man, definitely. We thought you were going to say 50. And we're like, okay. So the next time we worked with that brand, we were like, they're like, what do you think? We're like, how about 50? They're like, how about 25? So a lot of mistakes that I've made, and Alex is better at this than I am, is from the pricing standpoint. When I'm working for an agency or someone else, it's easy to price it because it's not me, right?
Mm,
So that's one mistake. Another mistake too is not sticking with your gut feeling and having faith in like your idea, right? So when we first got on TV, for our new segment, and CNY Central has been great partners. Someone else was interested in talking to us about the same thing, and they're like, you guys, you need to change the name. And we're like, okay, we just got to get on TV, we'll change the name. And we would do that now if it was like a big brand and we have already
yeah.
established this, but we stuck to our guns and it ended up working out. So there's been a lot of times though where I've like had an idea for a joke or something that I thought would be really engaging and make the audience feel like emotionally connected, and make, because you want to make people feel valued and respected, and then not used it, and then later on feel it fall flat. Or a video that we thought would be really great wasn't, and most of the time I look back and it's because I held something back.
Mm,
So that is often the biggest regret. So pricing, not trusting your gut. And the third one though is also like incorporating the right people. Like have people that you trust, because if you don't, and we have a partnership, so other entrepreneurs that are on their own, I worry for them sometimes, because then you get stuck in your own echo chamber. So being able to trust people, and if you trust them, then you can bounce those creative ideas off it and push each other. So those are three mistakes I've made I've learned from. And I don't regret, like you said, but I wish I could go back in time. Maybe I do. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would. Then I wouldn't learn the lesson. But yeah, it's always a learning process.
it always
You
is. Yeah. So actually, so you mentioned the name, and I forgot to ask you that earlier. But what's the origin story for the name Spatchcock Funk?
So originally we wanted to have something edgy and fun and cool. So and culinary and party-ish. So one of the original names we actually had was Sex, Drugs, and Lobster Rolls. But we knew that was never going to get, that wouldn't get picked up. So we wanted to have something that combined what the show is about. So something that was culinary and edgy, like spatchcocking a chicken or a turkey. Like you rip out the backbone, crush the sternum, and it allows it to cook more evenly. But one, people often like, is that a dirty word? We're like, no, get your mind out of the gutter. But we wanted like that type of
Right.
approach.
Yeah.
So like a badass culinary term, and we also love arts and culture and creativity. So the funk, actually, the word funk we took from the Rage Against the Machine song Renegades of Funk, which is actually a cover of Africa Bombastic's cover song. But if that's the combination, so something cool, hard, edgy music, something fun. And at first, the name, like people are like, I don't know if this is going to work. And we just push through it. But when I think about naming a business, like even though I worked at Eric Mower and Associates, and Eric Mower is a dear friend of mine, he's one of the investors in our business. He's such a great man. But I was like, it sounds like we work at a law firm. Like we should call this thing like Razorfish or something, but which is also a cool name of another agency. But naming it is interesting. So like Pearl Jam, originally their name was Mookie Blaylock, but the NBA was going to sue them for that. That's why their first album is 10 after that band. Or I think about like Wu-Tang Clan, their big like seminal album was 36 Chambers. And the album 36 Chambers, people think it's referring to Guns because they're a hardcore, grimy hip hop group, but it's not. There are 9 members and there's 4 chambers of your heart. So 36 Chambers, Matt, we have a lot of heart. So when you have a name behind the story and behind the brand, I think that to me, that resonates for me as a consumer of coolness. So I want to be we wanted to Alex, and I want to be able to create something similar to that. Like with Alex as the editor and creative director and producer, you'll see his like pop-ups, but he pays such attention to these small little teeny details that sometimes I'm not even aware of, but he is, but some viewer will. So that type of thing with the name and everything else is we want to make sure there's a cool story behind everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was always wondering, yeah, because naming for me is always hard too, whether it's a business, a website, a book, a podcast, a boat, what you name it, right? It's hard to come up with a name. So yeah. Yeah.
The naming thing, it's a fun thing to do with your friends, like whether it's a boat or anything. Like, and I used to do this with my students that were learning creative advertising, because to me, I love doing taglines and names, right? But it's hard, like you said. So what we do, our friends, all the time is we practice that. Like we have to name episodes, and we always want to have it like we had an off-roading episode called On All Fours, right? And we're clam bake one called In the Raw because we have to have the dirty innuendo in it. But to practice for that, like we'll be at out having drinks or barbecue and be like, okay, everybody has 10 minutes. What would you name your hip hop group? And then you'll hear like fun, and then that dialogue starts. So the naming process can be fun if you're used to doing it, right? So just keep practicing it. And to me, like with you are constantly, I'm talking about you, John, specifically. You teach, so you give lectures, you have this podcast, you've done a lot of appearances. So it comes across as very skilled and polished, but partly that's true because you do it with regularity, right? And it's something that now is naturally just a natural skill set. But if you had taken 3 months off from any of those things, it's going to be rusty at first. So the naming process, being creative, I think if you are creative, if you are a writer, you need to write every day. I don't care if it's a paragraph a day, but that to me is how that can get easier, or at least more fun.
Right. Just the repetitions and exercising that muscle, whatever that muscle is, right? That's a good point. Yeah. So last thing I want to ask you is, in creative endeavors, sometimes it's hard, or at least for me anyway, to imagine how you raise money from investors for that. How did you go about that? What was the process? Because at Syracuse, we just launched the Center for the Creator Economy, which we're super excited about. We're going to be, running students through Whitman and Newhouse and some other schools, and teaching them about the business of being a creator. And part of it, I'd imagine, would be capital raising. So yeah, really interested in hearing how you went about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'm excited about that center launching. Actually, my friend Carrie Welch sent us an invite, and we're going to go to the grand opening because I wish that existed when we were starting this, 5 years ago. But the capital raising is very difficult from a creative standpoint because, like I mentioned earlier, there's not an existing roadmap. So the first thing you've got to do is, in my opinion, as an entrepreneur and as a teacher of it, is we knew what our differentiator was. We knew what the MVP of the thing was. We knew that we had something that was real and functional and proof of concept. So we didn't have to worry about any of that stuff, because the investors would see that. Obviously, they wouldn't have taken the meeting if they didn't think there was something cool about it. The problem that we had was the valuation, right? Because our look at our run rate. So we're on PBS, and like at the end of the year, make a couple hundred grand, maybe we put it all back into the show. And we're taking in this money, but we have side jobs. So how do we prove that this company is worth a few $1,000,000 without a product? With advertising sales, the problem is cash flow. It's called sequential liability. So the station's going to pay us because the ads run, but they don't pay us till they get paid. We're fronting the cash to produce the show. So cash flow is an issue. So the first thing was valuation, and in a creative sense, unlike if you're opening a record studio or one of those things, or a production house like ours, how we did it was as follows. And it's not a great science. And even our investors, after they sign on, they're like, this is kind of bullshit, right? And we're like, I mean, yeah, but this is the best we got. So we looked at a bunch of people that are doing what we want to do. So we use like Guy Fieri, who I mentioned, Molly, who is an awesome blogger. She's a show on Food Network. Her show, sometimes I feel like it's like ours, like a more masculine version of her show. And like Binging with Babish and Maddie Matheson. So we took like a wide range of these people and first distilled down how they got there. So Molly was a blogger, pioneer woman, makes a ton of money. She was a blogger. They got picked up into a show. Guy Fieri won a next Food Network star. Binging with Babish started a YouTube channel. So we're like, here are all these different paths. Well, we already have a show now. So if you look across this, the potential we could make is anywhere from, out of the people I just named, like their lowest annual revenue from our research was 1.5 million up to like 80 million annually, which, that'd be pie in the sky. So we're like, based on this, we think our company right now is worth, $4 million, right? And while that's wildly speculative, and the investment in our business is very risky for our investors, we know that, and they know it. So acknowledge it up front, like, hey, this could make a lot of money, but failure is not only possible, it might be likely. So if you're going to create something, the way to, in my experience, but I can say this now, not academically, I can say it from factual experience, is the key is getting the investors to be excited about the idea itself and the person doing it, right? Like Alex is like my best friend and a great human being. So like that helps, and they have to buy into the idea, because creative fields, like if you think about some of the best creative things in the past 30 years, like I don't think J.K. Rowling, I don't agree with her as a human being, but she wrote some cool books in Harry Potter. She got thousands of rejection letters. If you go into Squid Game, which became a global phenomenon, I love that show. That dude got turned down by everybody. And now it's huge. So you have to find investors to buy into it. They've got to believe in what you're doing. That's the first part. The valuation is always going to be the most speculative thing you can do in the world. Like Post Malone, when he first came out, if you're like, hey, I'm a white dude with tattoos in my face and I'm going to rap and do grimy hip hop and then I'm going to do country music, you'd be like, dude, get this guy out of here. So the two tips is find any way to justify some kind of valuation, but also find investors that are going to believe in what you're doing, because creative stuff like might work, it might not. So that's really the focus.
Yeah, and what you said about them believing in you, right? It's and anybody who's invested in new ventures, they'll tell you it's about the team and believing in the people, right? Because you could have 5 different teams trying to do what you're doing, but which is the one that's going to execute and really make it happen, right?
Yeah, the thing about the teams, and it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Like that stuff is all true, but knowing, like you just said that beautifully, and I think about this a lot though. If you're going to create content, whether it's a book or something else, you're not unless you've invented something like you're Einstein, right? You're not doing anything radically different. Like we're making cool shows and throwing parties. Other people make great food. They're better chefs than me, way better. There are people that make better drinks than I do. But the differentiator, we think, and our investors thought, and our audience thinks, is this friend group, our personal style. Mm-hmm. So whatever your thing is creatively, you have to show me what's different, because creative trends are Sabrina Carpenter I love her music. I love her dirty like lyrics, and I like her message about like body positivity and relationship health. But she has this music style and the dirtiness that's her signature style. Since she got big, You see, like, I think it's Alexa Rose. She sounds cool too. But you see people start like basically copying it. And I'm not trying to throw shade to anybody, because we've made things that we saw that people were making. So you've got to prove to yourself and to others that what you're doing is going to be unique. Like your experience that you've had or doing this podcast, the thing that you bring to the table is, in addition to being obviously well put together and successful at business, is you bring a human connection to it that makes it different, right? That's a differentiator to me. So if you're going to do the creative stuff and you've got the right team, make them know that you're not swappable with somebody else. And that's the first big thing to get out of the way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, Matt, if people are interested in learning more about you and the show and what you do, where could they go and where can they find you?
I appreciate you asking, because we gotta promote this thing. We're on PBS, cities across the country, but you have to check your local stations for that. So it airs on Saturdays in New York, but Thursdays in LA. So first, check your PBS station, because PBS needs all the viewers we can get. Second, we're on YouTube, so Spatchcock Funk. Please like, subscribe. You can see all of our half-hour shows. All our 5-minute segments are all on there. And on Instagram, TikTok, all the socials. So we're trying to be everything everywhere, and hard to do, but we need the viewers. So let's go get them.
It is hard to do, but I think you guys are crushing it. So thank you so much for being here, Matt. I enjoyed this conversation, and I think everybody's going to get a lot out of it too. So thank you so much.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you so much, John.